All right, this video is going to cover section 2.1 for UMA stats. And I'm just going to type on the computer because I'm going to be able to show you some Google Sheet stuff too. So a frequency distribution shows each category of the data along with the number of occurrences. So it gives you all of the words and how many times each one occurs. Let's hope if I can spell right. And then a relative frequency distribution is the same thing. It's going to show each category along with the percent or proportion of occurrences, meaning that the relative frequency just represents the percent or proportion instead of the frequency, which is just the number. A bar graph is a visual way to represent data where the height equals either the frequency or the relative frequency. A pie chart is a circle that where each sector represents, wow, my typing is awful. Sector represents the proportion of the data. So that's the vocab for this chapter. Now let's actually get into doing some math. So if this table right here is all of our data, we're going to go in and we're going to make a frequency chart. So we've got body parts. Let's see. I see a back. I see hand. I see wrist. Oops. So yes, it takes me a minute to type this, but not that long. Groin, elbow, shoulder, hip, knee, and neck. Then if I were tallying these, I would go, hey, black, black, hand. So I might do like black, black, hand. And then the next column goes wrist, back, groin. So wrist, back, groin. And I would go all the way through this whole table. Elbow, back, back. Oh, let's see. That's 5 here. Okay. And then we've got back, shoulder, shoulder. Back, shoulder, shoulder. And then we have hip, knee, hip. Hip, knee, hip. And then neck, knee, knee. Neck, whoop. Knee, knee. And then shoulder, shoulder, back. Shoulder, shoulder, whoa. Shoulder, shoulder, back. And then knee, back, back. Knee, back, back. And then hand, knee, back. Hand, knee, back. Now with paper, I wouldn't have to change my font to get that. And then back, back, wrist. So back, back. Oops. Back, back. Wrist. So now we would figure out those frequencies. So this is 12, 2, 2, 1, 1, 4, 2, 5, 1. So this would be our frequency distribution. It may have the tally column. It may not. No big deal. Relative frequency is the percent. So if I added these all up, I would get 30. So my relative frequency would be 12 out of 30. Or if I type that as a percent, 0.4. This would be 2 out of 30 or 0.06 repeating. So this would be the same. And then 1 out of 30 would be 0.03 repeating. 4 out of 30 would be 0.13 repeating. And this is again, so the 4 out of 30 is a fraction. If I did that division, these are the percents that I would get. Knee. And then 1 out of 30 is 0.03. So that would be a relative frequency distribution because now I have all the proportions in there. Then if I wanted to make a bar graph, I would draw it. So I would take, well, I'll show you. We'll look at this. So bar graph. So I would draw something like this, where on the left-hand side, we would have all of the labels. So this would be like how many body parts there were. This would be like shoulder, neck, head, and then the height would represent the number of body parts. If it was a relative frequency, this left-hand side would be percentages, and the height would represent that individual percentage. Circle graph, same idea. You're just going to see it in a circle, and each sector is going to be a different size based on the percentage of the body part it represents. Making this by hand, you would need a protractor to be accurate. Bar graphs are easier to do by hand, but I'm going to show you how to do both on Google Sheets. Actually, all of the above on Google Sheets. So let's say this is our same list of data. If I click on this column A, and then the down arrow, I can choose sort. So now it's going to put these all in order for me to make my life a little bit easier. Then I highlight back, all of the backs. Down here in the bottom right, it tells me the count is 12. So I can scroll right to my table. The back frequency is 12. Then if I do elbow, there's only one of those. Then what's next? Groin, we only have one of those. Hand, we have 2 of those. Hip, we have 2 of those. Knee, we have 5. So hip 2, knee 5. And then neck was 1. Shoulder was 4. Wrist was 2. So I'm just going to bring this up here so we don't have to keep scrolling, making you dizzy. All right, so now that we're in here, I don't want to add these all up. Let's say the number's really big. If I type equals and then the word sum, it's going to give me a suggestion of D2 to D10. If I don't know the suggestion or I don't know how to read those, instead I can just click and drag the ones I want to take the sum of and hit enter. So it found 30 by doing it. Now my relative frequency, I would hit equals, click the cell, and then type divided by 30. And it does that. It may pop up autofill and you can click the check. Or if you click on this blue circle and drag, it's going to fill in those percents for you. So now I have all of those percents there and I didn't have to calculate anything by hand. Here's how we can do a bar graph. So I'm going to click and drag my mouse so I have all the body parts and all the frequencies. Then up here on my toolbar, there's a little bar graph. I'm going to click that button. Then it's going to pop out and show me, all right, a pie graph there. If I click over here on chart type, I can choose a column chart. And now it's even all labeled for me. It has the title, has the frequency, it has the body parts, and it plugged in what I had typed. I can go over here and change any of these if I want to switch it. I can make it horizontal. If under chart type, I just choose a horizontal one. We have all those options. Now let's say I want a circle graph, but I don't want the frequency. I just want the relative frequency or even a relative frequency bar graph. I'm going to click on this column, the little arrow, and then I'm going to choose hide, which will mess up that table. But if I now click on that and I do the chart, I have a pie chart with the percents right on it rounded. Or I have a frequency chart, but it says relative frequency instead. That's all. So the computer will do all those graphs for you right in Google Sheets or Excel. The next part of the notes talks about a side-by-side bar graph, which is just comparing two sets of data on the same grid. So it compares two sets of data on the same grid. So for example, if I had something like this with my education level, I could find the relative frequency of each thing and then do a bar of each of those. Just each year would have a different color bar at the same level. I can do that by hand. These are really big numbers. I don't want to. So I would type them into a Google Doc. Same exact table. But now I'm going to get the sum of this column. Hit enter. If I click here, drag that blue little circle over, it gets the sum of that column for me. Now I want relative frequency of 1990, relative frequency of 2013. So equals, then I'm going to click this box, divided by, and I'm going to type that number, 158870. And the reason I'm going to type it instead of click the box is so I can click and drag this. If I had clicked the box there, it would keep dragging to the box below. So you want to type that number on that actual one. I think I just discovered something. No. So now I want to do the relative frequency. So I'm going to do this one divided by that total. So 206,899. And then I can click and drag that as well. And now I have those relative frequencies. So if I want my relative frequency bar graph, I'm going to hide these columns. I'm going to highlight all of this. Click the graph. And it's going to make a side-by-side one right for me with the labels and everything. Tells us which one's which. Now I could do the same thing if I were to unhide those. And just instead of relative frequency, oh goodness, yeah, instead of relative frequency, it would just have the frequencies. So this will do that all for you. At the bottom of the note sheet are exactly the steps that I just took as I went through Google. Feel free to click on this, make a copy, and play with it if you want. The choice is up to you, but that is 2-2. Let me know if you have any questions.